Hey everyone, MacAndSwiss here, and welcome back to the third episode of the Roblox Ultimate Scripting Guide. Today, we are going over events. So without further ado, let's get started. If you have any additional questions, or you have anything that you want to talk to me about, I stream live on Twitch at twitch.tv/MacAndSwiss on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me there, or leave it down in the comments, or on Twitter, or on my Discord server. So, what is an event? Well, to put it simply, an event is an object that can be fired as a response to something happening in game. An example of an event would be something like a player joining the game, a player leaving the game, parts touching each other, or something like that. There are many events to go over, and obviously I will not be going over all of them, and this is where the developer wiki really comes in handy. If you have some specific event or something that you want to specifically try to see if it has an interaction for, feel free to look it up on the wiki or on Google. So there are three main functions that interact with events specifically, and for our example we will be using the part touched event. So the first function that we're going to be taking a look at is the wait event. Now, usually if I say script or print part touching something and I try to find some other part.name, this will give me an error because there is no such thing as, well, the some other part. However, if I say something like local some other part is equal to script.parent.touched wait. So this will clear up because we are connecting it, the variable some other part, now to whatever comes out of the event. And this is the first function that we're going to take a look at, which is the wait event. And this is a capital W wait, not to be confused with the lowercase w wait, which is a completely different function. So when we run this initially, and let's move it up into the air a little bit. So when we initially run this function, you will see that nothing happens until the part falls down, and then it says part touching something and the name of it, which is the base plate. So the wait function essentially, well, waits for a specific event to happen before firing and doing everything else. This will make it so anything that happens underneath here will have to wait until this specific wait is finished. So if I say print hello and I click run, you'll notice that this print hello has to wait until this, well, wait is finished before firing. The second function that we're going to take a look at is connect. Now this one is the most common function, so I highly recommend you to take a look at this and familiarize yourself with this. So we are going to take our previous example with the touched event, and instead of waiting, we will be using connect. Now connect takes one parameter, and that is a specific function. Now you can obviously create your function inside here, and I will just put function with the two parentheses and just press enter, and Roblox will automatically complete it for you. But Roblox does not actually recommend this. What they recommend you do instead is to create a local function by itself outside of the event and say print part touched touched name, and we will use touched as a parameter. And so instead of creating a function inside the connect function, we will instead just say, hey, just run the onTouch function once this goes through. So what does the connect function do? Well, the connect function fires whatever function is inside every single time the event is fired. So we can see this when we run the game. It falls down, it touches, it touches, it touches, and because of the way that the part bounces, or any part bounces when it falls down, it will call the event, or it will call the function rather, multiple times, which is why you see part touched base plate and a little ×3 at the end of it, because when it bounces, it calls that function multiple times. So this is really useful and used much more often than simply capital W wait, because this fires every single time an event is fired instead of just once. And the third and final function is probably the most useless in most common cases, but is still nonetheless a function that can be accessed through events, and that will be the disconnect function. So now, instead of simply saying that we are going to connect this function, or this event rather, to this function on touched, we will create a variable for it called connection. The name of it doesn't matter that much. You can name it anything that you want. Now, let's say that we want to disconnect this function after a while. Let's say that we don't want to always spam the chat, or rather the output, right? So I'm going to do something really, really lazy here and just say wait3 for demonstration purposes. And I will say disconnection : disconnect. What this is going to do is that this is going to disconnect this function from this specific event. So the event will still fire, but it will not call the onTouched function. So we can see that simply by running the game. You'll see that it touches, it touches, it touches, and it fires the event, but we will move it up now, and you'll see that nothing shows up in the output, and that is because our function has been disconnected from the event. Now, it is really common practice, and Roblox recommends this as well, to always disconnect your functions if they are not being used for a specific event. But generally, you don't need to do this, as Roblox will automatically disconnect all functions from an event as soon as an object is destroyed. So now let's talk a little bit about events and the data that they send through. Now, you might have noticed that when I am using the touched event, that I am magically somehow out of nowhere getting this touched variable, and it's just working as normal. And that is because of the fact that the touched event actually also sends you the information about what is the name, or rather, what is the other part that is touching it. Now, each individual event has its own amount of data that it sends. It could be just one bit of data, it could be a ton of data. And that is up to you to figure out. If you search up the name of whatever event on the developer wiki, you will find that in the parameters section, it will tell you exactly what the name of it internally is, which you don't really need to care too much about. You obviously can name your variables and your parameters the same way if you want to, but that's not that important. But additionally, it will also tell you exactly what the data is. So in my case, the touched event, it says that it is the other part that is touching. Even though there are a metric ton of events that are scattered throughout every single Roblox object, to the point where I would not be able to cover them all in a single video in a very meaningful way, there may be some situations where you might need something a little bit more specific, especially in regards to your own game. And this is where the bindable event comes in. Now, bindable events can be created pretty much anywhere, and you can just click on the little plus. Now, bindable events essentially function like regular events, except that you get to name them and you get to choose what data gets sent through. First, let's give a name to our event. I'm just going to call it my event, and we can assign it to a variable. So let's say that local my event is equal to script.parent.myEvent. Now, in order to fire the event, we will simply say my event : fire. And within here, you could literally supply any data that you want, as long as, well, obviously the data exists. I'm just going to say hello. Now, you might be thinking, well, how do you access that information then? How do you connect a function to that? Well, it's as simple as saying my event.event. So we are accessing the events inside the bindable event. It's a little bit confusing. So we'll say my event.event, and then we can use any of the three functions that we described before, which is wait, connect, or disconnect. So in my case, I'm going to say connect, and I'm going to be a little bit lazy here and just connect it to a function that I'm writing inside. And I'm going to say print hello there. And then I'm going to also add on the data, which you can just say right here. So I'm just going to put data and data. So what this is going to do is that it is going to fire the event and then connect it back to an event right here where it will say hello there and then also hello. So when we press run, and one last thing to make sure is to make sure that your connections are made before the event is fired, because obviously if it is fired and it has nothing to connect to, then the event will just evaporate. That fire will not be answered. So we're going to press run and we see hello there and hello. So this week's challenge is a little bit of a free-for-all. There are a lot of events, like I've said, to go through, and I want to see what you guys can come up with. So find any event that you want and connect it to a function that interacts with it in a meaningful way. So what I mean by a meaningful way is, well, connect the touched event to a part that changes its color to a random color when it touches another part, or say hello to a player through a UI element when they join a game, or something like that. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed and learned something. As always, my name is MacAndSwiss, the most Asian brony on the internet, and I'll see you all next time.